93-degree Texas heat. The Cat family wasn't headed to a water park, but to a stick-up in a small bank in a strip mall. The man with the gun was Scott Cat, and along for his first heist, his apprentice, his 20-year-old son, Hayden. Their disguises? Painters' masks and white overalls. Outside, waiting in the getaway car and communicating with the men on walkie-talkie, 18-year-old Abby.
Once we walked into the bank, then it was on. I was running on so much adrenaline and so amped that I wasn't even really feeling anything.
Two individuals walked into the bank and they ordered the tellers and everyone into the vault.
He was the muscle with the gun and I was the money guy.
Both men are big, over 6'3". Their sheer size and the gun enough to terrify customers. But it's the novice bank robber who's quaking in his boots.
I was actually shaking so bad that the employees grabbed the bag and started throwing money in for me.
In Hayden's hands, more money than he'd ever dreamed of.
How much does $50,000 weigh?
I'd say about 15 pounds.
With their garbage bag full of cash, they sprint out of the bank to the getaway car, which has been outfitted with stolen plates. The wheelman, a frightened teenager.
I was scared. It's just something you just want to be over with.
And what was it like driving the getaway car? You know, it's hard because you want to obey traffic laws, but your adrenaline is pumping.
It was hard. I had them in my ear. My dad would yell at me to not drive fast, so I didn't.
Despite the heckling from her backseat driver, Dad, the reluctant 18-year-old gets them to their apartment, half-mile away, undetected. The heist had gone off without a hitch, just like Dad had promised.
Was there a woohoo moment?
Not till we got home.
With her sack full of 50 grand, the spending began. Cars, motorcycles, booze, and drugs. Abby's spending much more sensible.
How'd you guys celebrate?
I went off on my own and just got my nails done.
In fact, the money came so easily and went so fast, within 2 months they'd burned through all their loot. Time for another bank job. The First Community Credit Union, just a few miles from the scene of their first crime. Before the hit, Abby cases the bank. That's her smiling and grabbing brochures from a bank employee. 11 days later, it's the same drill, new disguises. Ditching the painter's overalls for safety vests to blend in with nearby construction.
They walked into the bank with orange construction vests on.
Did you carry a gun in there?
No, we used a BB gun.
But it looked real.
Yeah, I remember a few people's face still.
What was their reaction?
Total shock.
Terror?
Yeah, they were scared, terrified, definitely.
Their take after 2 bank robberies, over $100,000. But the loot isn't exactly divided up evenly, according to the kids.
What percentage were they willing to give you?
10%.
Did you feel like 10% was enough?
Oh yeah, because I never even had that much money. So
Your whole life?
Right.
$10,000.
It was enough for me.
Enough to buy a very practical used Ford Focus and more of those manicures.
I know the part that I played was wrong, but it was my family, and the loyalty was greater at that point.
But her father and brother seemed more loyal to the cold, hard cash that was coming in and to blowing it fast.
Shopping, cars, partying, really nothing to show for it.
When the comforts of daily life include Jack Daniels, a new Chevy Tahoe, a Harley, and a swank new Houston apartment, even 100 G's can disappear pretty fast. And for the Cat family, that meant one thing: time to go back to work.
Had you planned another heist before you got busted?
Yeah, the morning they picked us up, I think we're gonna do probably 1 or 2 more.
That day?
Yeah.
That's right, the Cats had gotten cocky, planning a pair of heists the day before their arrest.
It got to a point where I thought my father knew what he was doing so well that there's a risk involved, but the risk was so minimal.
But that would prove to be wishful thinking because, as we all know, where there are robbers, there are also cops. And the cops were already on to them. On the surveillance video from the latest heist, they picked up a detail that would impress even Sherlock Holmes.
The vests looked new. They actually had creases in them.
Because they were creased, you figured they were new. And because they were new, they must have been purchased somewhere
Yes.
nearby.
We were able to tie those 2 vests back to a local Home Depot. And those vests were purchased with a MasterCard debit card that went back to Scott.
By using that MasterCard, Scott Cat might as well left his calling card. And there his kids are using it in Home Depot to buy the gear they were about to use in a bank heist. It was just the break detectives needed, and the cats were in the bag.
When Scott was arrested, the detective that actually made contact with him told him, well, you're under arrest for bank robbery. And Scott's initial response to that was, which one?
They quickly arrested Hayden as well, who was up in the apartment. There, they found the kind of evidence gumshoes dream of.
In the apartment, we found some bank straps. And a bank strap is a little paper strap that wraps around a certain quantity of money. Usually it's 1,000 denominations, and it identifies whatever bank it is that it comes from.
And some of those straps were from a bank in an entirely different state. Suddenly, the cops realized Cat is no rookie, but a bank bandit with a resume. They now had more than enough evidence to haul both cats in for questioning, and authorities were zeroing in on Abby too.
From my interviews with employees at the Comerica Bank, we knew that at least Scott was carrying a walkie-talkie and that those employees at Comerica Bank heard a female voice on that walkie-talkie talking to them.
Police had a pretty good idea of who that voice belonged to. The getaway girl Abby was arrested that day.
Abby called and she was yelling at me. I'm in jail and I need $10,000 to get me out of here. Get me out of here right now. And I said, you have to get that money from your father. She says, he's the reason I'm in jail.